So guys, Bungie just dropped an article on us from the Destiny dev team called A Closer Look at Void 3.0. With the Witch Queen expansion for Destiny 2, Guardians will face unparalleled threats, from exploring the seat of Savathun's power, her mysterious and nefarious throne world, to facing the Lucent Brood, hive enemies capable of wielding the light. Players will be tested in ways they've never been challenged before. It's a good thing then that Guardians come prepared. In addition to a new power cap and a host of new weapons and armor to use in the fight against enemies of humanity, Guardians will also be imbued with brand new capabilities thanks to some significant changes coming to the Void elemental power coinciding with the Witch Queen expansion. The Void update, what we call Void 3.0, is the first overhaul of Destiny 2's elemental powers to come in year 5. Look for arc and solar changes in the future. Void abilities haven't really been developed since 2017, and they were a reaction to the sandbox that was in Destiny 1, said Destiny designer Kevin Yanis. With Void 3.0 and the other elemental changes to come, the team had a set of goals they wanted to attain to bring these classic elemental powers in line with the challenge level and balance of today's sandbox, as well as to strengthen the overall fantasy that is at the heart of each element's playstyle. Now we're trying to codify each of the damage types so that each element has its own world of gameplay that it's dominant over, Giannis said. For example, stasis is the domain of crowd control. We looked at what Void was about, both thematically and mechanically. Void is about gravity, it's about space, it's about cosmic, and that means we want things to feel like you're shooting black holes that drag people in. There's a lot of personality we can draw from that creates cool mechanics. The first big Void 3.0 change is the introduction of Aspects and Fragments. First introduced with Stasis and Beyond Light, Aspects and Fragments give players more options to choose from when it comes to abilities they want to use in battle. As with Stasis, Aspects are class-specific selectable items that give players additional actions they can perform within their elemental subclass. Fragments are non-class specific complementary perks that players can select to enhance how they play the game. How players choose to combine their aspects and fragments is a key component of build crafting their Guardian. When developing the new aspects for Void 3.0, the team worked hard to center them around new actions, verbs, as the team likes to refer to them. That defines what Void should mean going forward for players. It wasn't just like a passive or perk, it should feel like a new thing that you were adding to your toolkit, Giannis said. All of the actions feel like they have new performances to them. They are reinforcing that core fantasy. Now these verbs manifest themselves in the forms of new actions for players to use in the heat of battle. New actions such as the Trapper's Ambush will find the Hunter diving and slamming into the ground, weakening enemies and causing nearby allies to become temporarily invisible. Titans will be able to grant barriers to allies, and Warlocks will be able to summon entities from beyond the void to help turn the tide of battle. More on all these actions below. None of that was available before the Witch Queen, said Giannis. The old Void subclass Diamond system was rooted around a melee augment, a super augment, and then 2 passives. What we've done is essentially added 2 new sections. Yes, you still get your melee. Yes, you get your super, but now you get 2 new things that either plus up your existing kit or give you something you didn't have before. We've taken elements and abilities from the diamonds and promoted them to full-size aspects, said Destiny designer Samuel Dunn. The Warlock's Chaos Accelerant ability is a good example of this, where the Warlock can charge their Void grenades into more powerful versions and throw them. While that's something that existed before, we believe the performance and the identity of the ability is strong and feels like a unique ability, enough to stand on its own as an aspect. Within the 3.0 upgrades, we're trying to take the cool parts of what already exists and then add in new stuff where we feel like there are holes to be filled. Now, before we take a deeper look at each class's implementation of Void 3.0, let's align on some terminology. Some Void attacks apply 1 or more of the 6 buffs and debuffs that confer a tactical advantage to the Guardian. First up is Suppress. The target is taken out of any activity ability when Suppress. While Suppress, the target cannot activate any abilities or movement modes. Combatants are disoriented. Weaken. The target takes increased damage, has slowed movement, and is disoriented. Volatile. The target will explode in a void detonation upon taking additional damage. If the target dies before Volatile has taken enough damage to detonate, the detonation happens anyway. Invisibility. The player vanishes from sight and does not appear on radar. Overshield. The player gains a protective barrier that immediately stacks on top of their existing health and shields and intercepts incoming damage. Overshield reduces the damage taken from PvE combatants. Devour. The player is immediately restored to full health upon activating Devour from any source and is granted grenade energy. When the player gets any kill with Devour active, they are restored to full health, granted grenade energy, and their Devour Devour buff timer is extended. Now let's take a class by class look at Guardians and how they would benefit from Void 3.0 in Destiny 2. Starting with the Titan class. All right, I know that was a lot of intro talk there. Most of us already know this stuff, but let's get it. The Titan, a Void-enabled Titan, is the stalwart shield of a fire team, whether serving up Ward of Dawn protective bubbles to withstand furious enemy assaults or charging the battlefield shield in hand, mowing down opponents, one shield toss at a time. Previously, the two supers, both Ward of Dawn and Sentinel Shield, were tied to one another from a control standpoint, so that Titans had to use similar input and sit through a chunk of Sentinel Shield activation animation before the ward bubble was created. Now with Void 3.0, the two functions are now separated, which means that Ward of Dawn is now nearly instantly activated. Yeah, you can actually see it in the gameplay right here, guys. Look how quickly it actually activates, meaning it will be easier to defensively counter another super. In addition, the Ward of Dawn has been moved to the fastest super cooldown tier, making it much more available to the Titan in need. This change means it's a much better reactionary defensive tool, said Destiny designer Mike Humboldt. So as an example, if a hunter were to jump at you and cast Blade Barrage, the Titan can now pretty reliably activate Ward of Dawn before any of the enemy supers land and survive as a result. Now just as before, Sentinel Shield will allow Titans to traverse the battlefield, bashing foes with their Void Shield or tossing their shields as melee attacks. Thrown shields will damage opponents and apply Volatile if Controlled Demolition is equipped, while Shield Bash kills will grant a full overshield. I love that right there, that the actual throwing of the shield will apply Volatile, and Controlled Demolition is just going to get nastier. Now the Titan's offensive bulwark. There are 3 Titan aspects to choose from in Void 3.0. First, you have Controlled Demolition. Hitting a target with a Void ability or Volatile detonation will make them volatile. Bastion. Casting Barricade generates an overshield for yourself and nearby allies. Those bunkering behind the shield will regenerate overshield over time and extend the overshield's duration. An offensive bulwark. While you have an overshield or are inside the Ward of Dawn, grenades charge significantly faster and you have increased melee damage. You also gain an additional shield throw for your Sentinel Shield super. Now we see some of the gameplay right here of these aspects in action. You got, of course, the Bastion, where you do your barricade like that, and boom, you've got an overshield. By the way, if you notice there, he's almost dead, and his overshield is regenerating at a pretty decent rate, like even faster than his own recovery. Now some questions are going to come up. How does this stack with Icefall Mantle? Can it stack? Does it double up your overshield? That would be something else. But the fact that we're going to be able to slide on Controlled Demolition to synergize with, say, something like Offensive Bulwark, where you're getting increased grenade charge, you can see where something like this would synergize perfectly with exotics like Heart of Inmost Light, literally just raining constant void abilities and detonations all over the place. Now moving on to the Hunter. The Hunter prioritizes movement and stealth in the heat of battle, whether it's enjoying a few moments of tactical recalibration in a tense encounter or briefly vanishing after dodging an attack or setting snares and traps to disorient and slow their opponents. A fight with the Hunter is always a study of agility, surprise, and deadly precision. Is that what it is? I thought it was just a guy with some stompies and a shotgun to the face. Now, in addition to Spectral Blade Super, the Shadow Shot variants that Hunter are accustomed to, Deadfall and Mobius Quiver, will still be found in the Void 3.0 updates, though there are some changes to be aware of. For example, Mobius Quiver will fire volleys of 3 arrows that will now track targets and make them volatile if they are tethered. In addition, with Deadfall, the Void Anchors that are dropped after Shadow Shot will now pull enemies towards it when it impacts a surface or a target. The Hunter Snare Bomb melee ability will now weaken opponents. Wow. Honestly, depending on that debuff, that may become such a go-to in things like Grandmaster Nightfalls. In PvP, players caught in a snare bomb will have their HUD removed and an obscuring screen effect applied for a short period of time. So a couple of things we see here from the gameplay. We actually see the Vanishing Step here on the Hunter class. He casts a super, which to me looks like the Deadfall super. And see how it like yoinks everything in the center there? And then he does the Vanishing Step. Now, I'm not gonna lie, guys. Does it look like the dodge itself has a little more range? Like, does it look like he's hopping a little further, or am I just making stuff up? Like, look at him. Does he look like he's got like an extra step to him? And that just looks like Marksman dodge. I'm sure Gambler's dodge has even more reach in its animation. Now, taking a look at Mobius Quiver though, we get a look right here at the actual super being cast, and look at that. Back-to-back volleys there. I prefer this a lot more. And honestly, you're gonna be able to use this inside of PvP, I think, simply because it's just got such a wide spread on it. Now, the Hunters will also have 3 aspects to select from with Void 3.0. The Trapper's Ambush. Players can activate Quickfall to spin their melee melee charge and dive to the ground, creating a smoke cloud upon impact. Enemies caught in the cloud are weakened and allies become invisible. In addition, snare bombs upon attaching to surfaces or enemies cause nearby allies to become invisible. And we actually saw a little bit of gameplay of this in the trailer, or the ViDoc. Now, vanishing step, dodging makes the hunter invisible. I think the significance of this, other than what I'm assuming, which is it has a little more reach, which means it should be even more elusive to deal with. The other thing is that you're just always going to go invisible. You'll be able to select that. It's not tied to a specific class like it was previously. Now, Stylish Executioner, defeating a void debuff target, weaken, suppress, or volatile, grants invisibility and true sight. While invisible after a Stylish Execution, your next melee attack weakens enemies. So interesting here, because we just talked about it a second ago about the Hunter Snare Bomb melee ability now weakening opponents, but this is going to be your next melee attack. So even outside of your smoke, we'll be able to weaken enemies. This may become like one of the most reliable way to apply debuff after debuff. And you can imagine something like this, how it would pair with things like Graviton Forfeit. I also have some questions about like Orpheus Rig. How is this going to synergize with essentially these new tethers? I don't know. We'll just have to see. Moving on to Warlocks. The infinite mysteries of the universe are the playgrounds of Warlocks. When they aren't nose deep in an ancient text, Warlocks are floating across the battlefield, healing allies and creating havoc amongst their foes. Void 3.0 fine-tunes these powers, and the Warlock's new aspects will, among other new abilities, summon a brand new type of support from the yawning void of space-time. The Nova Warp Super lets Warlocks quickly teleport from one spot to the next, and players can choose to let loose with a deadly void eruption. With the Vortex Super enhancement, a player's Nova Bomb will now draw enemies into the singularity it creates, damaging them once inside. And casting a Nova Bomb with the Cataclysm enhancement will cause it to travel across the battlefield and seek out enemies. Detonations will shatter into smaller secret projectiles, and shooting the Nova Bomb will cause it to detonate early, so essentially Slova Bomb. The Warlock's melee, Pocket Singularity, fires an unstable ball of void energy that detonates when it nears enemies, pushing them away from the blast and making them volatile. According to the Destiny designer, Mike Humboldt, he expects this melee will find particular use in Crucible. We do a lot of PvP testing, and knocking someone who is trying to shotgun rush you off the map with a Pocket Singularity is always a good time. Now, as with Titans and Hunters, Warlocks will have 3 aspects to wield in Void 3.0. Chaos Accelerant, hold down the grenade button to overcharge your Vortex, Axion Bolt, Scatter, and Magnetic Grenades. Magnetic Grenades overcharge into handheld supernovas. Feed the Void, defeat an enemy with a Void ability to activate Devour. Child of the Old Gods, cast your Rift to summon a Void Soul. When you damage an enemy with your weapon, your Void Soul will launch itself towards them and detonate nearby, attaching draining tendrils which deal damage and weakens the target. When your Void Soul deals damage, it restores either melee and grenade energy if running Healing Rift, or health if running Empowering Rift back to you. Defeating an enemy who is being drained grants Rift energy. I'm sure it's becoming very clear to you that Nezarac's Sin is about to be meta. Now we actually see gameplay here, and notice the moment they shoot, it immediately goes out there, makes contact, that Void Orb, and then applies that debuff. Look at that weaken effect. And you can see where it like does this stun lock to the surrounding enemies. This is going to be crazy, and it's going to be really good inside of PvP as well. Now, designer Samuel Dunn calls the Child of the Old God aspect a passion project for him, something the team worked on for quite a while to get right. I'm a Warlock main at heart, and I really love summoning little friends like Arc Soul and Bleak Watcher to do my bidding. So I wanted to make sure that Void Soul felt like a black hole, but with a little personality to it. Yeah, I don't think it's any surprise that Bungie's got a lot of Warlock mains. I'm a Titan, and I would love a Void buddy. Just saying. Now, Chaos Accelerant. To complement the class-specific aspects, Void 3.0 will also introduce a number of new fragments, which offer new perks to build upon, as well as add bonuses or penalties to your Guardian's intrinsic stats. Here's a look at a few of the new fragments to come. Echo of Explosion. Void ability kills cause enemies to explode. Intellect bonus. Echo of Provision. Damaging enemies with grenades grant melee energy. Strength penalty. Echo of Domineering. After suppressing a target, gain greatly increased mobility for a short duration, and your equipped weapon is reloaded from reserves. Discipline bonus. Echo of Undermining. Void grenades weaken enemies. Discipline penalty. So you can imagine, guys, just looking at this, like Echo of Undermining, combined with Chaos Accelerant, combined with Controverse Hold, combined with that other fragment that makes your Vortex grenades last longer. Jesus. Another significant change for Void 3.0 is that all subclasses will have access to all Void grenade types in the game. For example, as a Hunter, you'll be able to run with Suppressor or Magnetic Grenades instead of choosing between just Void Spike, Void Wall, or Vortex. In addition, some grenades will see upgrades. For example, the Lingering Field created by Vortex grenades will now suck enemies into it. Players who have played Destiny before the Witch Queen expansion will have access to all Void 3.0 aspects and most fragments with the launch of Witch Queen on February the 22nd. Several fragments will be available after the world first raid completion. New Destiny 2 players will earn their aspects and fragments as part of the new light game experience. Interesting enough right there, right? Like they're holding some fragments until after the world's first raid completion. Yeah, you know we're gonna get some busted stuff then. Now, across all these ability tweaks, new powers, and build crafting options, one theme is clear. The team behind Void 3.0 is focused on giving Guardians the chance to fulfill their fantasy of their chosen class by giving them ample opportunity to do what that class does best. As Dunn puts it, we built out multiple ways for the player to access and key off their core verbs. For example, Dunn said, the Titan has several ways to earn and extend overshield in fights. Use the Bastion aspect to create a barricade to grant overshield to you and your allies, and then use the shield throw melee to also grant an overshield, as does the Void shoulder charge. With the overshield, the Titans also get increased grenade recharge and melee damage. As a result of these new build crafting options, players can double and even triple dip into these verbs, like overshield for Titans or invisibility for hunters. As Dunn sums it up, it means you can do the things that your class is supposed to do all the time. Void 3.0 arrives to coincide with the launch of the Witch Queen on February 22nd, 2022. All right, guys. Yeah, so we had some questions before, like, will my Titan be able to use Devour? Will my Warlock be able to go invisible? And will my Hunter be able to shield bash? Not the case. It's obvious right here that Bungie still wants classes to have designated roles. I hope that's okay. I like what I see here, I really do. But I was hopeful to see these verbs cross over between all the subclasses. Like the idea of devouring my grenade while playing an Invis Hunter, I guess that might have been too busted, right? But you can't say it wouldn't have been fun. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.